But as the hours turned into days, she couldn't deny the truth. Her body was failing her. She could feel it in her bones, the weight of something more insidious than mere fatigue. She had lost so much weight that her clothes hung loosely around her frame, her arms and legs thin and frail. Her hands shook uncontrollably, a telltale sign of the treatments ravaging her body. One morning, Claire tried to go downstairs, but halfway down the hallway, her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the floor, too weak to even break her fall. She lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, unable to move. What was happening to her? It was the first time she let herself feel the full force of her illness. For the first time, she didn't force herself to pretend that everything was okay. The weight of it all came crashing down, her body, her health, her life. Everything was slipping away. Her mother called later that day, and Claire didn't even try to hide it. Her voice was weak, and her words came out in a slow, hesitant whisper.
"Mom, I don't think I can do this anymore."
Her mother's voice, full of quiet concern, answered back.
"What do you mean, honey? You have to keep fighting. You've been so strong. Just hold on a little longer. We're all here for you."
Claire closed her eyes, biting her lip to stop herself from crying. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want to let anyone see her break. But the tears came anyway, hot and unstoppable. Her mother's words felt like a soft blow to the chest. Claire knew she was fighting, but at that moment, she wasn't sure if she was still capable of winning. The tipping point came a week later when Claire attempted to return to work. She had convinced herself that she was ready. She would put on a brave face, pull herself together, and go back to the office like everything was normal. But nothing was normal. The exhaustion was all-encompassing. Her mind, once sharp and quick, now felt like it was moving through molasses. She couldn't concentrate on anything. She kept forgetting things, names, dates, tasks. Her brain no longer working at the speed it used to. By the time she entered the meeting, she felt completely disconnected from the people around her. The words they were saying didn't make sense, and the charts on the screen before her blurred into an incoherent mess. She couldn't keep up with the conversation, couldn't answer the questions they were asking her. Her vision darkened again, like a shadow falling over her. The room began to spin. The heat in her body surged, and before she could stop herself, she collapsed at the table, her head hitting the surface with a dull thud. The next thing Claire knew, she was waking up in the hospital again. Her colleagues had rushed her to the ER. Her body too frail to withstand the pressure of even a simple meeting. This time, Claire didn't protest. She didn't even attempt to put on a brave face. She couldn't. She was done pretending. The doctors informed her that the cancer was spreading. The treatments weren't working as they had hoped. There was nothing more they could do. In the quiet aftermath of the hospital room, Claire finally let herself face the truth. For the first time in months, she didn't deny it. She didn't convince herself that it would go away, that she was invincible. The fight was slipping from her grasp, and she couldn't hold on any longer. She was tired. Tired of the pain, tired of the endless treatments, tired of the hope that had once driven her. She felt a weight lift from her chest, but it wasn't the relief of acceptance. It was the quiet resignation of knowing that she had lost the battle. She had tried so hard to keep going, but the truth was undeniable now. She couldn't fight this forever. It had been weeks since Claire's last hospitalization. Her body was weaker than ever, and the treatments had stopped making a difference. She no longer had the strength to fight, and for the first time, she was allowing herself to rest in that realization. The house that had once been filled with the noise of her fast-paced life now felt eerily silent. Her once busy calendar was empty. The buzzing of emails and the whirl of phone calls were distant memories. All she had left was time. And as the days stretched on, she began to notice how the quiet was no longer terrifying. It was, in some strange way, peaceful. She had always been someone who filled her life with noise, constant work, social commitments, an ever-present drive to achieve more. But now, with the cancer's grip tightening, she found herself sitting alone in the living room, looking out the window. The world outside still spun, people were still living their lives, but she was on the edge, watching. She had never allowed herself this stillness before, and now it was all she had left. One afternoon, as Claire sat by the window, the phone rang. It was her mother. Claire hadn't told her about the recent decline, about how weak she had become, how her body had started to betray her in ways she couldn't hide anymore. But her mother had sensed it. Her voice, always a bit too upbeat, now carried the edge of concern Claire had been avoiding.
Sweetheart, how are you doing?
Her mother asked, the words gentle but heavy. Claire didn't have to lie this time. There was no point in pretending she was still fighting. The words slipped out before she could stop them.
I'm tired, Mom. I don't know how much longer I can keep going.
There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Claire felt a flicker of guilt. But then her mother's voice returned, more fragile than usual.
I know, darling. I know. But we're all still here. You're not alone. We'll keep fighting with you. I'll be there soon.
Claire could hear the muffled sound of her mother sniffling, but Claire couldn't bring herself to comfort her. For the first time, she wasn't the one holding everything together. She wasn't the one who needed to be strong. The truth was, she was tired of the fight. She was ready to let go.
I know, Mom.
Claire whispered.
But I think I'm ready to let go.
The next day, Claire sat on her porch, the soft autumn breeze brushing her face. Her best friend Ellie had visited her earlier in the week, and they had spent hours talking, about everything and nothing. They talked about old memories, about their time in college, about the lives they had dreamed of having, the things they never had time to do. It was almost as if, in that moment, Claire was not the person she had become in the past few months. She was Claire, the vibrant, spontaneous, unstoppable woman who had once taken the world by storm. That version of herself felt so far away now. But sitting there in the fading sunlight, Claire began to realize something profound. There was nothing left to prove. No more pretending. No more trying to be the person she used to be, the person everyone expected her to be. She could see how much she had fought, how long she had clung to the hope of recovery. But now, after everything, she knew it wasn't about winning the fight anymore. It was about peace. Acceptance came in small moments. It came in the softness of her mother's hand as she stroked Claire's hair, in the quiet companionship of Ellie sitting beside her, not needing to fill the silence with words. It was in the realization that life didn't need to be filled with constant motion and achievement to be worthwhile. Claire had spent so many years striving for success, for perfection, that she had forgotten what it meant to simply be. But now she could finally let go. It was okay. She didn't have to fight anymore. One evening after Ellie had left, Claire walked through the house, her steps slow, as though each one required more effort than it should. The house felt emptier now, a shell of the bustling home she had once known. But even in the emptiness, there was something oddly comforting. She touched the pictures on the walls, running her fingers over the edges of memories. A smile, a vacation, a celebration of some milestone. These were her moments. The memories she had created, the people she had loved, and who had loved her back. For so long, Claire had resisted the thought of leaving. She had fought with everything in her to live, because life was so precious, so full of possibilities. But now, in this quiet space, in this last chapter, she could see it wasn't about fighting to stay alive. It was about finding peace with what had been. She was ready to let go of the fight. That night, as Claire lay in bed, she closed her eyes. The exhaustion she had carried with her for so long seemed to finally release its grip. Her breathing slowed, and for the first time in months, she felt her muscles relax. There was no fear anymore, no panic, just a deep, profound calm. She thought of her family, her friends, the people who would grieve her passing, the people she loved. But she was at peace. The next morning, Claire woke to the soft sound of birds outside her window. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, bathing the room in a gentle glow. The world outside was still turning. Her illness was still there, but it no longer held dominion over her. Claire had given herself permission to let go. It was in this quiet, undramatic surrender that she finally found what she had been searching for all along: acceptance. Later that week, Claire gathered her family and friends. She had one final request. She wanted to be surrounded by the people who had loved her in her final days, the ones who had seen her at her most vulnerable, but who had never turned away. They sat together, and Claire spoke softly, her words measured and calm.
I know I won't be here for long, but I want you to know that I've lived a life I'm proud of. I've had the chance to love, to work, to experience so many things that I never thought possible. I've had so much joy, and I want you to remember that when I'm gone. Don't focus on the sadness. Celebrate the moments we had.
The room was filled with quiet sobs, but Claire's voice remained steady. She had come to peace with herself, with her life. And in that moment, so did the people around her. In her final days, Claire was surrounded by love. And as she let herself go, she did so with the quiet knowledge that she had finally found her peace. The battle had ended, but in her acceptance, Claire found a kind of freedom she had never known. Claire's last days were marked by an eerie stillness. She no longer had the energy to get out of bed, and her body seemed to weigh down the very bed she lay in, as though every inch of her had become one with the sheets. The room was quiet, too quiet, but in that silence she felt a peace she had never known before. The constant hum of anxiety, of worry, had been replaced by an acceptance so deep that it felt almost otherworldly. As the cancer began to take its final toll, Claire spent most of her time resting, her body too fragile to do much else. Yet, even in her frailty, she still found moments of clarity. Moments where her thoughts were not clouded by pain or fear. She could finally see everything in its true light. Her family, though emotionally devastated, had gathered around her in these final days. They had all promised they would stay by her side, and despite the weight of their grief, they kept that promise. But Claire didn't want them to see her like this, broken and frail. She didn't want to leave them with these images of her. She had always been the strong one, the one who led the charge, who solved the problems. But now she had nothing left to give. The first time Claire truly realized that the end was near was one evening when the sun was just beginning to set. Her sister, Emma, sat beside her on the bed, holding Claire's hand gently in her own. They hadn't spoken much over the past few days. Words felt unnecessary. But Emma's presence was a comfort.
Claire.
Emma whispered softly, her voice trembling.
Mom just wants you to know, she's doing everything she can to keep it together. But I know you're leaving us. And I just don't know how to say goodbye.
Claire's gaze drifted to the window, where the last rays of daylight poured into the room, bathing everything in a soft golden glow. Her eyes were distant, unfocused for a moment, but then they shifted to her sister. She couldn't answer. The lump in her throat was too much, the emotion too overwhelming. It was happening. The end was coming.
I'm not afraid,
Claire whispered, her voice a ghost of what it once was. She could barely hear it herself.
I'm ready, Emma. I'm ready to go. But you have to promise me that you'll live, that you won't stay stuck in this. Don't let my leaving take away your happiness.
Emma's eyes filled with tears, and she squeezed Claire's hand harder, desperate to hold on to something, anything, that still felt like the sister she knew.
You can't leave me. You can't leave all of us.
But Claire shook her head, her eyes soft and understanding.
You'll be okay. You're so much stronger than you realize. You've always been.
That night, Claire's mother arrived from the airport, and the moment she walked into the room, the weight of her presence was palpable. She had been away on business when Claire's condition worsened, and even though she tried to mask her fear, it was evident in the tightness of her shoulders and the quick, anxious steps she took towards her daughter. When she reached Claire's bedside, she hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach the woman who had been the center of their family's life for so long. Finally, Claire's mother leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture that once would have been filled with maternal authority, but now carried the tender sorrow of goodbye. Claire managed to lift her hand weakly, brushing a stray lock of her mother's hair away.
Mom, it's okay. You don't need to keep holding on for me.
Her voice was barely audible, but it carried a quiet resolve. Her mother didn't respond immediately, but her lips trembled, and her eyes welled with unshed tears. She knew. She had known for a long time. The cancer had taken so much from them, but it had not taken Claire's spirit. Claire's strength, even in this moment of vulnerability, remained her legacy. But the loss was still unbearable.
I love you.
Her mother whispered, her voice breaking. She bent down to embrace Claire, but it was a feeble, fragile embrace, one that could not change the inevitable.
I love you too, Mom. Please don't mourn me. Don't carry the weight of this. Live, just like I want all of you to. Live.
As the final hours drew near, the room became filled with a quiet and somber energy. Everyone was there. Emma, Claire's mother, Ellie, her closest friends. They had all gathered in that small, dimly lit room, waiting for the inevitable. No one spoke much anymore. The sound of Claire's shallow breathing was the only noise filling the room. It felt as though time had stopped. There were no more words to say, no more comfort to give. They were simply existing in this space, holding on to each other, knowing that this was the last time they would all be together in this way. The moment Claire slipped away was subtle, almost serene. No grand dramatic gesture. No sudden gasp for air. Just a slow, almost imperceptible deepening of the silence around her. 1 minute she was there, her chest rising and falling, her hand weakly clutching her sister's. The next she was gone. The silence became unbearable. Her mother, sitting beside her, felt the shift before anyone else. Her eyes shot to Claire's face, and for a moment, she couldn't quite comprehend the stillness. And then it hit her. The weight of it. Claire was gone. There were no words. Only the collective intake of breath from everyone in the room as they all simultaneously understood that the person who had been the heart of their world, their Claire, was no longer with them. Ellie, sitting on the other side of the bed, placed her hand over her mouth, unable to stop the sobs that shook her body. Emma, too, wept quietly, her head bowed as she held Claire's hand for the last time. The hours that followed were a blur. The family members had to make arrangements, prepare for the funeral, take care of the legalities, but none of it seemed real. How could they live in a world without her? The funeral was small, intimate, and beautifully simple, just as Claire would have wanted. No frills, no grand speeches. Just memories, shared stories, and a quiet, overwhelming love that felt too big for the room. But despite the overwhelming sadness, there was something else, something bittersweet. In the wake of Claire's passing, those who had loved her most began to see how much she had given them, even in her last days. She had left behind a legacy of love and strength, and it was in her final moments that Claire had made her peace. She had prepared them for this. She had taught them to live in her absence. And though they would never forget the ache of losing her, they would always remember how Claire had taught them to be brave, not by fighting against the inevitable, but by learning to accept it with grace.